Laurie Huston's News for the Heart is dedicated to helping you give a voice to your own soul. Our hearts have the power to free us from pain and the struggles that keep us from awakening to our true essence. Join Laurie now as we delve into our heart and soul to find the path that will open us to the possibilities and lead us to the life we love to live.
All right. And good afternoon. This is Intuitive Soul News for the Heart. And today I have, growing to be one of my favorite people, Laurie Wilson.
I'm growing on you, am I?
You really, truly are.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here with you.
Like Laurie, I've probably been following you for a very long time. You've been doing medical intuitive, a school even for medical intuitives for a long time. I mean, you've been on this journey for quite a while. We had a wonderful experience. Was it 2 weekends ago or was it just last? No, it must have been
It was 2 weekends ago, yes.
You did a 24-hour live session. I mean, that must have been crazy.
It was really, really fun, actually. Working up to it and all the pre-work is not so fun, as of course I'm sure everyone knows who runs their own business.
Yeah.
The getting it, once it was ready, it was like, now we can finally just enjoy. So yes, we did 24 hours straight, intuition marathon, and we had 24 different topics, as you know, 24 different guests, which you were one of them. We were so thrilled to have you, and lots of questions and answers. And people even, were staying up through the night and setting their alarm to get up and come on and ask questions. And it was really, really fun, really fun. People quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so impressed. I don't think I could have done 24 hours straight. You started on Friday at 5 and then
Friday. Yeah. Yeah. Went straight to Saturday at 5 as well. There was probably a 2-hour period, in the morning, I think maybe between 6 and 8 in the morning, where it was like, it might be nice to sleep. But of course we couldn't, because we were just up for another few minutes. And we're parents as well. Both my husband Stuart and I, we've had 4 children. So we are no strangers to 24-hour cycles where you think you're going to be going to sleep, but either somebody's sick or somebody needs something, or as they get older, they're where they shouldn't be, and then you have to go get them. So it's no problem to be up and talking about something we love so much for 24 hours. It was quite a treat, actually. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you channel grandmother. You've channeled grandmother the most of your life?
No, I met her in 1989, just when I was turning 30. At a really kind of key juncture in my life, trying to figure out what to do with my first marriage, and it was kind of ending, but how awful that is of a decision to have to make, and I had small children, so it was like, please help somewhere, and doing some journal writing, and sure enough, I wasn't asking for a guide. I didn't actually even know about spirit guides at that point in time. I had heard of, guardian angels, that concept, but I'm a social worker. That's my professional designation, so they don't really talk about spirit guides in class. If so, I might have skipped or missed that class. I don't remember that kind of addressing spirituality and that life questioning, which is interesting because, again, as a counselor, that's why people come. They're questioning what's going on and why did this happen, and what about deeper meaning? So I would love at one point to see it worked into the curriculum. So yes, I was doing some journal writing, trying to figure out this difficult decision. And sure enough, grandmother, my spirit guide, came into my awareness. Now I would see her sort of as a visual, but not like an apparition, not something you could actually see with your outside eyes, but inside my own mind. And then she was talking to me very clearly. I could hear her talking. So I just actually thought that it was creative visualization, Laurie, that I was just making up a constellation figure, a grandmotherly figure. And of course, I'd always felt very connected to Native culture, not necessarily knowing why. But of course, now understanding much more that that was somewhere where I had lived in the 1400s with her in the Wind River area of Wyoming. And that's what she said, that she was there, she was back for me, but she was mostly here for everybody else. And that she was here to help people trust themselves again. And at the time in the 1400s, she said that they had received information on the wind that they had to start burying traditional wisdom, you know, connection with the land, connection with ourselves, that type of traditional wisdom, until it was safe again for that remembering or that wisdom and that power to start to come back to the earth. And so that was in 1989 when she said, you know, now that you've asked for help and now it's kind of the right timing, then I can come back into your awareness. So that was really quite amazing. And as I said, I didn't have a frame of reference for it. So I just thought it was me talking to this archetype basically in my mind. So then I would go to my journal, you know, fairly much every night and grandmother, are you there? Oh, yes, child, she'd answer. So I would journal, you know, with her in my awareness. And so then I spoke to one of my friends, one of my colleagues. Actually, she was on the 24-hour marathon as well, Barbara Susan Booth. Toward the end, she was on. And she's the one that I said, hey, you know, this is some pretty interesting stuff I'm writing. It's very poetic. I want to read some of it to you. And she said, Laura, I don't think that you're making that up. I think you're actually channeling. I think that is your grandmother from the 1400s. Like, what? I knew about past lives. I had been doing past life regression in my private practice for a number of years, but didn't really think that someone from a past life could come and be a guide, you know, for us in this lifetime. Hadn't made that bridge or that connection yet. So it was really wonderful to connect with her. And of course, she's a busy part of my work and practice and has had a huge influence in a lot of the teaching material that we bring forward. And we have, on our online classes, we have an evening with grandmother once a month, and people can ask questions about anything they want, about life in general, and she has great answers from her spirit perspective, looking down, you know, on the earth. And it was actually through grandmother that I learned how to do medical intuition. So when I do medical intuition, it's separate from channeling. I'm not asking grandmother to come into my awareness. I'm actually asking to connect with the body, like the client's body is the source of wisdom, as opposed to connecting with grandmother. But it was through her that I learned how to do it, because if we were doing an appointment for, let's say, for a client and they had something going on with their body, she would, you know, say, oh, there's this challenge in your lung or whatever. And then she would sort of look sideways at me, meaning you go in there and talk about that. I did a year of nursing out of high school, so a lot of physiology in that first year. So I thought, well, you know, the 1400s, they probably didn't have physiology textbooks or too much knowledge of the body that way. So I'm just being helpful. I'm just going in with my, you know, 1 year nursing physiology knowledge, and I would describe the mucosa or what area of the lungs. I would kind of pop inside and look around and show her, you know, tell her what was I seeing in there. Nice. And that's what I realized. Then some of my clients would be saying, you know, well, no offense, we don't really want to talk to grandmother. Like, no offense, grandmother, because she's so wonderful. But they would say, like, I want to talk to my body. I want you to do that body thingy, you know, sort of the only way that we could describe it. And so then for a number of years, I would call it body scanning. So people would come and they wanted me to connect with my intuition to their body and scan their body to basically ask the body what's out of order, what's out of balance. And so it wasn't really a difficult process, because I was already trained. Well, one, in my counseling, I'm already trained to pay attention. That's what you do. And then to pay attention to invisible wisdom wasn't that much more difficult, you know, to pay attention to grandmother. So then to pay attention to the body was just sort of the next step on the journey. And I had been doing medical intuition, well, body scanning, I called it, for probably about 8 years. And then that very same friend, Barb, she had gone and taken a class down in the States with Shealy and Carolyn Myss. So of course, everybody knows who are in the field that knows they are the gurus of, you know, medical intuition. They're the ones that have coined the term. And so Barb, in her wonderful networking way, had called Norm and said, hey, I think you should check out Laurie. I think she's doing medical intuition too. You should. And of course, Norm is always a phenomenal researcher of everything. So he's always checking things out and looking under rocks and, you know, finding out what's out there in the field. And so I can't remember the year it was, maybe 1994 or 5. He called and said, hey, I hear you're doing this thing, and you know, can you scan me? And of course, I didn't know who he was at that time, and like, well, sure, I could do that, and if you were referred, no problem, I'll set up an appointment. But he wanted me to do it right then, like on the phone. It was like, well, I have to set up an appointment. So we did, you know, and he said, oh yeah, you know, you're pretty good, you're doing medical intuition, don't you know? And it was like, I don't. Well, tell me what you mean, and who are you? And you know, so that was that wonderful meeting of his work, and that he was doing as a pioneer, of course, of the whole phenomenon. So I've been teaching, you know, you had mentioned earlier, I've been teaching medical intuition since the year 2000. So that's a little while ago, 19 years now, to other health professionals and people who have experience with health. And really, it is a teachable, it is a skill. You know, people talk about, oh, is it a gift? And it's like, no, it's not a gift, it's a skill. And my privilege in all of the classes we teach is to take things and break it down into little understandable and teachable pieces so that everybody can learn how to do it, and do it in their own way, in their own style. Because, you know, how we perceive life and receive information is going to be very different than the next person. So we want to teach the principles, but also help people hone their own style. Some people are really visual, they see all kinds of things in the body. Some people more have a knowingness, kind of more auditory, that they just get information almost dictated to them from the body. Other people feel it in their own bodies, more kinesthetic learner, and on, you know, the different ways of perceiving. So you can hardly tell I'm somewhat passionate about this.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And it's been great. We've taught probably about 500 or 600 health professionals since that time how to do the work. And now that we're doing all of our teaching online, you know, the grace of technology that we're using here today, then people they don't have to travel. They can learn the information on their own time. And we've changed the format a little bit. Before it was well, we were in classrooms and we were teaching, but then they'd do scans and hand them in for marking and get feedback, and then they'd come back and learn some more. This time what I've done is broken it down into kind of two sections, two levels, so you can learn all the information on your own. And then if you want more coaching or want to do some scans and have some more, to be certified, then you can do the second level. But most people that do it, they don't need the second level. You know, there's enough there, and there's a lot of information that they can just learn and off they go and run with it on their own. So I'm very excited to see that, you know, more people using those tools to be able to check with the body, right?
So you have had an incredible journey. I mean, that's so cool. And I mean, you've been doing a lot of work. You would, like me, I have my social work degree. I think you have your master's, but I started with social work. I developed my intuition. I've done some medical stuff, but that's not my forte. Definitely helping people with their fears. That's kind of what I do. Now, you talk about it like body wisdom, and I am assuming that maybe that's how grandmother talked to you about it, because it was more about, you know, understanding our bodies than the medical intuitive aspect that came in later, which is very cool, because Norm was definitely the pioneer in all of this, and Carolyn Myss as well, but he sort of started it for sure.
Yeah, he's the one that coined the term. And, you know, of course, he comes from a medical background, so he was very, very curious, how could someone with intuition, which was Carolyn's forte, apply that to a physical body as well, and could that be helpful, you know, kind of determining what some of the underpinnings of what was going on health-wise without the clients maybe not knowing, or maybe the test couldn't measure those kinds of things, and could an intuitive practitioner pick up on that? Mm-hmm.
So body wisdom. Our bodies, they talk to us all the time. We don't often listen. I think for myself, I mean, I have learned so much over, especially the last few years. And this month, I've sort of been talking about fears in health. And, I've noticed a lot of things, especially with me around sugar. Sugar and I do not match. Unfortunately, even fruit and me, I mean, I'm okay at the time, but as soon as I try to wean off the sugar aspect, so lower the sugar, then my whole body goes out of whack. And it really does. My heart rate, the resting heart rate, it lowers quite significantly. And then when I try to do any type of walking and stuff, it's almost like I almost pass out, because I know that my blood sugar is low and it affects me. And I know it affects a lot of people, but for me, sugar is definitely not good for me. I try to eat more vegetables. Not one of my favorite things.
Not your fave, okay. You got it.
There's not many vegetables that I can actually cook that I like. A few, not very.
Yeah.
Juicing, juicing's great if I can add in some fruit. But so fruit and me at the time it's not a problem, but when I try later. So my body has been giving me lots of signs, and definitely has been letting me know it doesn't matter if it's fake sugar or real sugar. Stevia doesn't seem to be a problem, but any of the sugar alcohols, terrible. Most of them, I think, is because a lot of them have something to do with birch trees. And I have an allergy to birch, so that possibly is the problem. But for most people, I think our diet really affects our bodies. And I think we don't really pay attention to it because, we need food to eat. We don't need maybe the amounts of food we eat. We don't need the processed foods that we eat. I mean, our society has changed so much. I mean, it's so much easier, and in a lot of cases so much cheaper to buy, kind of crap food than it is to buy healthy food. Not always. We kind of take that, I think we use that as an excuse. But
it's quite tasty usually. Yeah.
Very tasty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I believe, I'm starting to realize just how important diet is to the body.
That makes perfect sense, yeah. But everybody's body is different as well. So it'd be kind of nice, when you said earlier, Laurie, about the body's always talking to us, it is giving us information and wisdom. I'm always kind of quick to remind people too, like the way that the body talks to us or communicates to us isn't so much with a conversation, like it's not like chirping us in our ear, say, don't do this or don't do that. But it'll show us, it'll show us by way of results, or show us by way of, if you just almost sit with something when you go to grab for it, or look, if you're out shopping and you go to put your hand toward it and just pause to see if your body wants that or not, it will usually direct you to the right things of what is good for it and what is not. If we kind of eat with those, there's a difference between eat toward a body-directed craving versus maybe a taste bud or a mental craving. So that sometimes it's hard to get over that. But I think our body it's kind of like we talk about it in the medical intuition course, it's kind of like a universe unto itself, right? And so it's always working with checks and balances, and we could have a drink of something or eat something or move or not move, and every time we do anything or have a thought, everything has to change inside of that universe because it's compensating. You move and that changes muscles, it changes nerves, it changes hormones, it changes, the water balance, just bending over to get something. And then, You know, if we're eating something, that changes the whole universe again. So I think we're always trying to keep it in balance. But sometimes if we have like, you know, cravings or things, it's like, oh, I just can't stay away from the sugar, or I really want to go for the sugar. There may be something inside the body that is compensating for. So it's like, well, why, you know, why do you crave that? And somebody else might crave salt, and somebody else might crave chocolate or coffee or whatever. It's usually trying to write some balance in there in that universe of your own.
Right.
Yeah. So for me, when I connect with the body, I'm asking it, what's the root of the imbalance, you know, with a certain condition or a certain symptom. So if we ask, say, for example, what's going on with this imbalance about sugar, then I would connect with your body and then have it show us or teach us what that is. So as a practitioner, I don't have to be skilled with, you know, naturopathy or medicine. In fact, the more I know, sometimes that can get in the way, because it's like, oh, well, it must be something to do with insulin, or must be something to do, but it could have something to do with your muscles. It could have something to do with something more emotional. Like, we don't know. And so that's what ends up happening, right? We have all kinds of theories. We go to different practitioners with their background and their wonderful experience base, and they can have good theories too. But we forget to ask the body, you know, why is your body having troubles with sugar? Because you could line up 10 people with almost the same story, but the reason they're craving sugars could be all very, very different.
Right.
So it's something we could check if you want to.
Please.
Please. All right. All right. Well, I will check with your body. If for some reason, since we're alive, and I know you're very frank with all of your wonderful followers, so if there's something really super private, I'll let you know that it's a super private piece, and I'll tell you later, and then you can choose to tell your audience.
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
Fine. You're like an open book. I love it. Okay. So I'm just going to take a breath, and even though we're face to face here, I'll just connect with your body, and just to be, for those who are aware, because I was on your show before, we were talking about grandmother. I'm not connecting with grandmother, and not that we don't love grandmother, she's wonderful, but I don't need to connect with her. I need to connect with your body, which is a unique source of wisdom unto itself. It would be like if we wanted to connect and get a message from your cat, we would want to go to your cat, you know, or to the tree outside. We want to go to the tree. We want to go to the source of wisdom that, you know, that is straight up basically where we want to connect. So I'm just connecting with your body, and I'm just looking off to the side so I can focus on your body, and I'm asking it basically, can you show us the root of what's going on with Laurie's sugar cravings? I'm just going to call it that. And then I'm doing this action because I'm scanning your body to see where does it want to take us first. And it's showing that there's 3 separate things that are influencing. So usually when I do this privately, I'm writing it all down. So I'm just writing that 1, 2, 3 down. The first place that it is bringing us is to your digestive area, is to the pancreas. And it's showing that there's not enough sodium bicarbonate in your pancreas. It has different, different hormones, different chemicals in the pancreas itself. But it's showing that the sodium bicarbonate levels are really, really low. Okay. And so your body is kind of craving the sugar to act in that little chemistry set, trying to help with the digestive process. It's thinking that it needs the extra sugars in order to help digest things. So that sodium bicarbonate level has been lowered since about 8 years ago. And there seems to have been quite a shock to your body 8 years ago.
Yeah, that's exactly the time frame.
Yeah, so it feels like it was almost like an emotional shock, but then a physical shock, sort of mid-body.
Yep.
And so that's when the levels really started to go down, the sodium bicarbonate. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The second level is actually taking me up into the neurology, into what are called the neurotransmitters, like the chemicals, the chemistry set in your head. Well, it's in your stomach as well.
Yes.
The neurotransmitters, both dopamine and serotonin, feel lower than would be optimal for your body's chemistry. And so the sugar is showing that kind of when it comes in, it almost adds like a bit of a pick-me-up, like a mood enhancer.
Yeah.
And it also is showing that it does what, not only does it help with the chemistry, but it also seems to help with just general mood as dopamine in particular would, just kind of like a mood enhancer. And then the actual sugars, mostly from the fruit. You know how you were saying earlier that it's hard to get away from the fruit-based sugars?
Right.
It's showing that it, especially if you're eating it between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., seems to be kind of your jonesing time for it, or your craving time, that it actually seems to help not only with the mood, but also it helps with the muscles. If you don't have but I'm also, now it's taking me into the cells, and I was wondering is that the third piece, but no, it's still part of the neurotransmitter piece. So in the cells themselves of the muscle tissue, particularly for you in your body, in your upper body, like shoulders and upper back, it actually seems to, because it's surrogating for this dopamine in particular, then it actually in the cells seems to make the muscles less sore. So again, as Laurie, I don't have enough knowledge of all of the functions of dopamine, for example, and how that would interact with muscles. But you could ask your healing team members or do some research and see what that that connection is. Mm-hmm. Because when you're, trying to eat healthier, for example, it's like we want to make sure that whatever it is that the sugars, the fructose in particular, is doing that's helping your body, you want to make sure that that gets supplemented or adjusted somehow so that you don't end up being really, really kind of sore, especially in your upper body.
That's interesting.
And then the third piece of the puzzle, this goes back further in time. This goes back to between age 3 and 6. And your body is showing that at that time you had some bladder infections and some strep kind of throat, strep systemically. And even though you probably didn't get to stay home as much as you could or should have, because of what was going on, I think the bladder infections kind of went almost unnoticed, like under the radar, is the words that the body wants me to say. But
so what happened around that time, and for quite a while later, is I had a lot of ear problems.
Okay.
So the focus was always on my ears, because
okay.
That's a pain that you just can't seem to
get away from. Yeah.
So I had tubes. There was one year that I was in the hospital under general anesthetic 13 times because of ear.
Oh my goodness.
And that was a result of the fact that when I was adopted, my birth mother, out of 3 children, was the only one that could hear. So her mother got red measles and became deaf. She married a deaf man. They were in a deaf school. They had 3 daughters. She was the only one that could hear, which must have had its own issues. She stayed there till she was like 30. So
wow.
Yeah, to never be heard.
Yeah. That would be really challenging.
Yeah.
As you're sharing that story as well, and I'm just taking it kind of back to the body, it's showing that the undiagnosed strep that was in the bladder, and yes, probably did manifest known to in the ears, that whole piece of the puzzle, it's like sugar was basically your only comfort.
I'm sure.
And I keep seeing popsicles, like lots of popsicles. And so
because my ears, yeah, and I had my tonsils out.
Okay, yeah,
all of that stuff. And
in this day and age, you just about want to go crazy. You're dealing with something that eats sugar for a living, right? And so here, have some more sugar. It's like, anyway, we just don't know what we don't know sometimes, but it's like somehow your body has equated back at that age 3 to 6 that sugar, even if things are kind of going crazy around and I'm uncomfortable, and when I drop back down into the bladder, it's like I'm uncomfortable and I'm scared, especially to do with school, then when I'm scared, I eat a popsicle. Like when I'm scared, this is the fix, something sugary, temporary tones the scare down a little bit, but it also feeds that low grade strep, which still is in your system. And so, you're keeping it at bay, but it's still in there as a low grade issue. Mm. So that kind of feels complete as far as those are the 3 things that are in the balancing act of why you're craving it. You're craving it for a reason. So again, if people were working with you, if you can share those pieces of the puzzle and work on getting all of those things in balance, because it's no sense to deny, you deny yourself the sugar, then you're going to go into that scared place. You deny yourself your sugar and somehow that the digestive enzymes aren't working right. Like, I'm not sure how you would replace or boost up the sodium bicarbonate in your pancreas. That's beyond my scope. But at least if we know what's out of balance, then you can kind of apply yourself or your team members to helping get it back in balance so that you can, function and not always need the sugar, as the fructose in particular, as that helper that it is. It's helping, which is, again, not necessarily all ideal, but right. you at least we can respect why it's there and why it's doing what it's doing. Yeah. So did that make sense to you?
Absolutely. That was more information than that was definitely not what I was expecting. And it's interesting because 8 years ago was when I started getting frozen shoulders.
Oh, okay.
Metal poisoning, which was from buses that I was driving. Anyway, it was a very interesting time and shock. So, yeah, that's exactly everything that was going on around me. The frozen shoulders may not have happened right away, but it was all around that time. So,
okay.
Interesting.
Well, and interesting how your body was showing earlier, like that it, that a lot of that tension in the upper body, the muscles, it's like, okay, even the sugary, I mean, again, as Laurie, I don't know how this could do it, but it, our body's quite amazing. It's like, oh, I don't have this. Okay, I'm going to grab from that. I'm going to cobble this together. Like, it's pretty magnificent in keeping balance in there. So it was particularly trying to keep that pain from your upper body at that muscle tissue level that it mentioned. That was more of what was going on with the fructose surrogating for the neurotransmitters. It's like, oh, who'd have thought?
Who'd have thought?
Exactly. Who'd have thought that? And then to have, something that's been gone under the radar, with that low grade strep, that's been following you really since your youth.
Right.
Again, this is always where you'd love to, pull different practitioners on board and say, well, okay, we did a test, but we can't measure it. And then you talk to somebody else to say, well, if you have low grade strep, these are the symptoms that you would have, and this is the remedy we would give. And maybe homeopathically, I know that the homeopaths will deal with a lot of the subtle pieces of the puzzle.
And now, is that low grade strep still there? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So it is still there.
In my bladder.
Well, it could be systemic by now, like all through your body. When you were 3 to 6, it was the bladder infection that was gone under the radar, like it wasn't really diagnosed. And again, I would love to, talk to a naturopath to say, okay, if it's low grade and it's systemic, but it started in the bladder, could it go to the ear? Is that sort of like a second place where it would show up?
Right.
Or how's that even connected? And, we want to get the expertise of the health professionals that this is their, this is what they do. But we can read around as well, go into the journals and go find out where those connection points are. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, really. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so there you go. And you never know. You could be asking about your shoulder, for example, and all of a sudden you ask the body, what's the root of what's going on with the shoulder? And it could go right down to the left knee and be telling us and showing us this whole story. And it's like, well, how does that, we don't always, when we teach our students to go to one isolated observation or one set of symptoms, we call it core mining, where you learn how to do a full scan, but then you can also then just check in with one area, but don't be expecting that the root of that one area is going to be there in the shoulder. If the shoulder is acting out or flaring up for some particular reason, it may be because of something else completely different. Yeah. So it's just a wonderful job of discovery, right? We have to learn how to pay attention and track and go where the body is teaching us and be able to tap into the body. But other than that, it's just a complete, I'm fond of saying in classes, be prepared to be surprised with every observation. That's the right kind of attitude to have to bring to the body when you're looking for that body wisdom.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was in the period of frozen shoulders and going to a muscle activation person who, started at my feet. Wrap my feet. I'm like, I'm looking for something for my shoulders and you're wrapping my feet. Awesome.
Yeah. But it probably was relaxing different things at different levels. And my husband is an osteopath. And so that's such a thorough way of looking at like everything that's connected in the body, muscles, tissue, nerves, the fascia. It's like everything is connected to everything. So very well might have been working with, your fascia chain that starts down at your feet and ends up in that shoulder for all we know.
Yeah. So body wisdom, that's really what it's all about is, like you said, 10 people, 100 people could have very similar issues. And I think, sugar addiction is a big issue for a lot of people. To know that it's unique for everybody, I think is just as important as, understanding our unique intuitive abilities. And we all are so, we are made partially from our experiences, partially from, the lessons we set up before we came here, and partially from our bodies, because it is our bodies that right now that are at least the easiest way for us to sort of start to understand some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, and our body, people think sometimes our body's just a bother. It's like, well, excuse me, it has so many complex processes that are going on, and it's not ever trying to be a bother. It's trying to keep you here. It's trying to keep you alive so that we can have these experiences and work out different things like you were mentioning. Our soul's got this promise and this decision, or I want to express myself a certain way. At this point, we kind of need a body to do that. So it's never the enemy. The other thing I like to remind people about if they're kind of connecting in with their own body or someone else's body is to really start to be able to refine the difference for themselves about what does the body feel like and what is the body kind of showing you versus what does our mind sound like, or what is our mind's frequency or that mind connection. And in the marathon that we did just a couple of weeks ago that you've referred to, Kelly Woodruff and I were chatting about like what is the difference between the mind and the body. And the mind's energy is kind of faster. It's got a faster frequency, that beta or busy mind kind of frequency, whereas the body is more of a relaxed and subtler kind of, well, more like almost like a meditative type of frequency, that alpha rhythm that we would use to, do a meditation or be creative or check in with our bodies or do intuition, period. We've got to be in that kind of slower alpha rhythm. And so when you're scanning or connecting with your own body or someone else's body, you really want to make sure you're staying with the body and getting the information from there, as opposed to hopping up into the mental plane, like the thinking plane, and getting information from either your own mind or maybe it's the client's mind. I could have connected with your body like we just did and kind of gone to, maybe you had some thoughts and theories about what I was going to find or what was the reason of this, or, I might have said something like, 8 years ago, and then all of a sudden your mind would join in and start telling me the problem about what you had 8 years ago with the frozen shoulder. And so if I'm reading or perceiving or using my intuition and I'm plugged into your mind, what I'm going to end up with is a scan that may not be accurate at all. It's like, I've tuned into your body using my intuition and I'm giving you your worst nightmare, giving you your thoughts and theories or your practitioner's thoughts and theories about what's wrong with your stomach or what's wrong with your shoulders. So we have to be really discerning to be able to know, am I actually connecting to the body or am I connecting to the mental plane of my client or any of their team members? Because then you're going to get an inaccurate portrait of what's going on. And of course, the client's like, so it really is that my frozen shoulder, it really is my yeast infection. Oh, darn. Yeah, that's what my team member told me. It's like, well, maybe I was just hearing that theory in your energy field. So we don't want to be doing an intuitive scan on somebody's body and reading their worst nightmare or everybody else's theories. They already have that. We want to kind of wade through that and go to the body and learn from that, that quiet place of knowing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So important. I mean, our minds are very busy. I mean, that's usually the first place we can connect with if we're wanting to do a reading or something. People's dreams, they're right there to touch.
Yeah. Well, or their fears as well. You're
yes.
about fears. It's like, those are pretty easy to find. It just that has a high charge. So it's like, let's just plug right into that fear.
Yeah.
It's very important.
It really is fascinating. I mean, the journey is amazing. And see, that's why, we want to have other people in our sphere. We want to have people that will know different aspects. That's why not one of us are alike. It's why we're all so unique. We all have gifts that will assist us in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Your piece of information, somebody else's piece of information. I mean, it all sort of fits the puzzle so that we can understand who we are.
I love your image of a puzzle, because it is puzzle mastering things together, and everybody has that piece, but it's not, not going to get the whole big picture unless you put it all together, which is, if you're feeling unwell, is not always our favorite thing to do. We just want somebody to tell us and fix it and give us that magic, remedy or correction. And it's like, usually a little more complicated and layered than that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much all of my stuff, because part of my life journey has been around abandonment, or at least it had been. So all of it would sort of go somewhere there. Right. It was helpful to say, well, it's your abandonment thing. It's like, really? Well, okay. And I've looked at several layers of this. So what layer can I get now? But I mean, that's the beauty of it, is that there's always somebody.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's always something or somebody that we can connect with that will give us a different piece and allow us to see it in a different way and show us. And so I love what you're talking about. I love how the body's wisdom, because again, I think for a lot of spiritual people, we tend to think, very big picture and,
Mm-hmm.
out there instead of in here. And I think that's really key because we're living in this body.
Yeah,
We
we
chose
are.
this body.
Well, and sometimes, like some of the things that your body was showing us here, Laurie, today, it's like they're pretty specific physiological things. They're
Right.
not big picture, like there was a piece of that connected to it, but it was a third on the list. And so the body kind of gives me, this is the first priority, this is the second priority, for example. So even though it factored in there, that piece of your youth and some things that had happened earlier childhood, that's only number 3 on the list. So we could work away at all of those pieces, or your abandonment issues, or my feelings of fear, or I get scared but I don't know why. We can work and work and work on those things, but if that sodium bicarbonate level doesn't get helped out, or why are the neurotransmitters so quiet, could we not just help those out? And it's like, oh, well, there's actual chemistry that's also involved in the picture. And I know that a lot of my colleagues can really, we've kind of, I say we've swung the pendulum overboard by way of saying everything is spiritual, everything is in our mind, everything is in our belief. We've gone from nothing is connected, and what do you mean your mind or your emotions might have that's just all in your head, you're talking nonsense, to the point where now we're almost blaming people you got to fix up your belief system, you got to fix up your thoughts. And it's like, I don't know if fixing up your thoughts are going to change your dopamine levels. Like maybe they will, but maybe you just need a supplement, or maybe there's some other reason that somebody could explain to you what would tank those levels of neurotransmitters. So I think we have to watch out in this excitement to look at the big picture, in our new age kind of way. We need to drop that exclusive sort of pointing that everything is now related to emotions or thoughts or feelings. Like as social workers, 100% we get the importance of that, but it's not always 100% of what's going on. And that's why I think sometimes people, especially if they're unwell, they don't need that kind of, if you only could look at why you're creating this, and you just want to run them over with a bus. Like, that's not fair to say that to somebody who is feeling unwell. Yes, maybe I do need to look at my whatever emotional piece of the puzzle. And of course, my emotions will adjust my physiology. But sometimes, sometimes there's a muscle, or sometimes there's just something out of balance that's in the day-to-day physical body. I tell this story once of a woman and she's given me permission to say this. So she called up and she was very insistent, and somebody had referred her. She says, I need you to check. I have to go to an interview, and I keep, like, something's wrong with my hip. And I don't know what's wrong with my hip, or my knee, or my knees keeps going out. And everybody's telling me that I'm afraid to move forward. But I have this big job interview in New York, and I really want to get it. But I can't go, I can't go to this interview hobbling in for this big high powered job. And so she says, I've been working on this, but I don't know what my issue is, my spiritual issue. Can you scan and tell me what it is? So then I, quickly scanned and to say, okay, what's the root of what's going on with her knee? And I said, okay, well, I can feel things are kind of off with your foot. And yeah, it's bringing me to the knee. And then it's bringing me actually up to your hip. And it's showing me that you're going for treatments. It's like an acupuncture type of treatment, seems to get it back in order. But then the root of it, and her body brought me to her cupboard, like to her closet. And wow, what a neat closet she had. And she had a pair of sneakers, and I'm looking at the sneaker, and she has this little puppy, a little golden retriever puppy. And of course, you're telling the person something. You don't know if they have a puppy or not. What are you doing in my closet? But her body was just showing me the closet, and overturning her sneaker. That on the instep of the heel, this puppy had very carefully nibbled off part of her shoe, and had eaten all the pieces. So there was no evidence in that neat closet. She might have not, oh my gosh, my shoes aren't overturned, and she turned it over. Of course, it was so neat. So every time she'd go to her acupuncture to help with her knee, she would then, okay, great. I said, I can see the red dress that the red skirt you want to wear to your appointment, and you're going and jogging and running to make sure you're all in perfect form for this interview. But every time you're jogging, you're running and you're stepping, but your shoe is out of balance. And so it's like your shoe was causing the knee issue. It was really the puppy had chewed the shoe. So here she is looking for the root of, I'm afraid to move forward, and my knee is, my right side is my male side, and my knee is flexibility and motion forward. And meanwhile, it was her little tiny sweet puppy just eating a little nibble off of mom's shoe. And that was the real root. Like, yes, the knee and all of this, and she could look at her issues, but she was squeaky clean. She was ready to move forward. She just kept going and jogging every time she felt better. And she just needed a new pair of running shoes, is what she not this great spiritual picture. So, I mean, you could go crazy with that and say, well, the dog knew about the spiritual issue and was chewing it. It's like, oh, come on. It's just the shoe.
Sometimes it's just a shoe. Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, so that was just a great story, because you could go on that, swinging out their bandwagon to say, well, it's the right side and it is about moving forward. So what's your issue? Why are you afraid of moving forward? So, I want the job. She ended up getting the job, which was great, and kept the dog and everything. But sometimes it isn't what we...
You closed your closets so we would stop chewing them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a closet door closed. That's the motto of the story.
Aw, that's adorable.
Yeah. So I thought, you see enough things like that where it's not what you expect.
Right.
And it's like, oh, okay, well, let's just keep learning from the body. As long as you're plugged into the body, it will show you, it will take you to what's out of balance. But we need to be willing to go there and not be all busy in our important minds, with any preconceived ideas.
What I also liked about what you told me is that there's a good reason that my body's craving sugar.
Yeah.
That we keep thinking everything's a bad reason, right?
Yeah. Well, it's trying to balance something. Yeah.
So no matter what is going on with you, your body is still trying to balance you, even if it causes other problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, we have a picture, or we've got those internalized voices, well, this isn't good, or whatever, I shouldn't do, da-da-da-da. Like, well, okay, and what's out of balance? Like, we can hear those and we can try to eat healthier. Of course, that would be the goal. But why are you doing that? Why are you craving that? Again, if you lined up those 10 people or those 100 people, they're all going to have very different reasons. So wouldn't it be nice to just partner with your body and figure out what the reasons are, so that, and they will be different from one another. Yay.
Fascinating. It really is. And it's amazing that you're available and teaching all of these people, how to be able to do this, because it's such an important piece that, again, we're all so different. We're all unique, and we all may think it's one thing because that's where everything sort of leads us, but it could be 3 things.
Well, it could be 3 things, yeah, and not what we expected, any of them. That's what I love about, I'm quite surprised that we don't have more conversations about connecting to the body and, kind of including the body as a partner in our own healthcare, because we obviously have a body and we respect a body, and there's so many specialties that look to the body. Right. But having the body's partnership in showing us what's out of order is still pretty new, that I have discovered so far. So I'm hoping that over time we'll learn how to quieten ourselves and partner in, with that body. And, I'm fond of saying, why not have a human body, meaning us, be also an instrument to be able to pay attention to that human body. We've got all kinds of great technology. I mean, technology is just blow you away with what it can scan and do and go in and check tissue levels and, like MRIs and ultrasounds and all sorts of amazing technology. But if they're going in and checking and there's nothing there, but the root of it is more emotional, or, you can do the best MRI, but it's not going to find systemic strep.
Right.
It won't pick up on that. It's looking for a tumor. It's looking for some restriction. It's looking for the bone to be out of place. It's not looking for some of these other levels of, it's not going to find neurotransmitters on an MRI. So it's like, can't we just use another human body to just say, hey, what's going on here? And have our human body be open to perceiving what's going on with some other human body. It's not to replace anything, but it certainly can be a supplement, by way of information. So it's been nice to be in this field as long as I have, because I've gone from, it being, oh, that's really interesting, but how would I ever tell anyone? To people saying, okay, my practitioners asked me to have a scan to see what's going on because we can't figure it out, So it's not carte blanche in every, oh, yes, we welcome medical intuition, but it certainly is gaining respect by way of a supplementary tool of paying attention, which is really all it needs to be. It's not to replace a single thing. But in case, P.S., we want to ask the body, that I can help you do that.
Yes, and I think that's amazing. And, we need to have, I guess, more of an open mind, but also understand that sometimes we can't do this by ourselves, because we're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to live, on top of a mountain in a cave anymore. We're meant to be part of, a bigger place, a bigger community, to network, to create, wonderful connections. And let's stop trying to do this all on our own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody's got a piece of that puzzle you were talking about, and it'd be nice to gather them from everybody.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, since it's getting very dark here for some reason.
Yes, I was going to say, you're only just going to be a face soon.
I know, right?
I'm sensing that. Well, it's been wonderful to be here with you, Laurie, and thank you for all you do, for all your wonderful listeners and followers. And I know that I love getting your newsletter, and I always enjoy reading it and see what kind of love and inspiration you're giving us next. So thanks for being out there for everybody too.
And you. All right, you've been listening to News for the Heart. We've been getting to the heart of what matters with Laurie Wilson. Please check out her website at Inner Access 101. There's a lot of information, and do join in on her, monthly chats with grandmother. They're free, they're amazing, so take advantage. I mean, not everything's for free, but there's some great things that are, and really, really should take advantage of it, because we all are here to be together and not do this alone. So thank you, Laurie.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was wonderful to be here.
Have a question for Laurie and want to be on the next News from the Heart show? Drop us a line via instant feedback at bmajor.org. News from the Heart is brought to you by Intuitive Soul and is produced by Major Radio for Clear Channel's iHeartRadio and bmajor.org.